Right now, there is something heavy sitting on your chest. Maybe it's a problem you can't solve, a situation that spun out of control before you even understood what was happening, a relationship fracturing, a career stalling, a version of your life that feels like it's slipping through your fingers no matter how hard you grip. And the worst part, the part nobody talks about, isn't the problem itself. It's the feeling that this one is different, that this time it's too much, that the weight of this particular thing is unlike anything you faced before, that the people around you, if they truly understood the full picture, would also be terrified. You replay it, you analyze it from every angle. You wake up at 3 a.m. and it's the first thought waiting for you in the dark. What if I told you that over 1,000 years ago, a man on his deathbed looked up at a student trembling with exactly that feeling, and said 8 words that permanently changed how that student saw every problem he ever faced for the rest of his life? 8 words. Not a philosophy, not a 12-step system, not a breathing exercise. 8 words. Stay with me. In 9th century China, in a small monastery carved into the side of a mountain in Hunan province, there lived a Zen master named Yunyan Tansheng. He was not famous for grand speeches. He was not known for dramatic wisdom dispensed to crowds. He was quiet in the way that deep water is quiet, still on the surface, but moving in ways you couldn't see and couldn't measure. His student, Dongshan Liangjie, had been with him for years. And in those years, Dongshan had learned one uncomfortable truth about himself. He was a thinker, a relentless, exhausting, obsessive thinker. The kind of mind that could not let a problem rest. The kind of person who, when given a thorn in his foot, would rather spend hours analyzing the thorn, its origin, its depth, its angle, than simply pull it out. Sound familiar? One winter, Yunyan became gravely ill. The kind of illness that didn't negotiate. The kind that made it clear, without a single word, that the man lying on that mat was not going to rise from it. Dongshan was panicking, but quietly, the way intelligent people panic. On the outside, he was composed. He fetched water, he kept the fire going, he performed every practical task with precision. But inside, he was catastrophizing at full speed. What do I do when he's gone? I haven't learned enough. I'm not ready. There are still questions I haven't asked. What if I forget things? What if I make mistakes without his guidance? What if I'm completely alone with my own mind and it destroys me? One evening, he knelt beside his master and, unable to hold it in any longer, he asked a question that had been burning in him for days. "Master," he said, "after you're gone, if someone asks me to describe your teachings, what should I say?" He was really asking something else. He was really asking, how do I carry this? How do I survive without the thing I've been leaning on? How do I face what's coming? Yunyan was quiet for a long moment. The fire crackled. The wind moved against the wooden walls of the monastery. And then the old master opened his eyes, looked directly at his student and said 8 words. Just this is it, just this. Dongshan blinked. That was it. He bowed. He left the room. And he spent the next years not fully understanding what he had been given. It wasn't until one ordinary afternoon, crossing a shallow river, glancing down and seeing his own reflection broken and reformed by the moving water, that it finally landed. He stopped walking. He stood in the river with the cold water around his ankles, and he understood. And from that moment, according to the historical records of the Caodong school of Zen Buddhism, he was never again paralyzed by a problem in the same way. Not because problems stopped coming, they didn't, but because his relationship with problems had been permanently, fundamentally altered. Now here's where this gets interesting, because what Yunyan gave his student wasn't mysticism. It wasn't a riddle designed to confuse. It was, as modern psychology has slowly begun to confirm over the last several decades, one of the most precise and accurate descriptions of how the human mind creates suffering. Let me explain what's actually happening when you sit with a problem and feel like you're drowning. Your brain has a system. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network. It's the mental activity that happens when you're not focused on an immediate task, when you're in the shower, when you're trying to sleep, when you're staring at the ceiling. The default mode network is a storytelling machine. It doesn't deal in facts. It deals in narratives. And its favorite narrative, the one it returns to again and again with almost obsessive loyalty, is the narrative of what this means. Not what is happening, what it means. You don't just lose a job. Your brain immediately constructs a story. This means I'm a failure. This means my life is off track. This means I should have made different choices 10 years ago. This means I don't know who I am anymore. You don't just have an argument with someone you love. Your brain immediately writes the extended cut. This means the relationship is broken. This means I'm difficult to love. This means this is the beginning of the end. The problem in front of you, the real, actual, factual problem, is almost never as devastating as the story your brain writes about it. Psychologist Albert Ellis built his entire career on this observation. He called it the ABC model, the idea that between an activating event and a consequential emotional response, there is always a belief, a story, an interpretation, and that the suffering almost always lives in the B, not the A. Viktor Frankl, writing from inside a Nazi concentration camp, arguably the most extreme human circumstances imaginable, arrived at the same conclusion from the opposite direction. He watched men survive the unsurvivable, not because their circumstances changed, but because they changed the story they told about their circumstances. He wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space is the only freedom that can never be taken from you. But here's the cruel irony that nobody prepares you for. The smarter you are, the worse this gets, because a more powerful mind doesn't just write one catastrophic story, it writes 12. It builds a complete alternate universe of possible disasters, maps out all their interconnections, stress tests each one for plausibility, and then presents the whole architecture to you at 3 a.m. as though it were a verified report from the future. Intelligence without the right anchor becomes a weapon your mind turns on itself." This is exactly what was happening to Dongshan at his master's bedside. He wasn't suffering from the reality in front of him. He was suffering from the 30-year story he had already written about what that reality meant for his future. And Junyan, a man who had spent his entire life studying the mechanics of the human mind, cut through all of it with 8 words: just this is it, just this, come back to the only thing that is actually real. Come back to this breath, this room, this moment, this specific, concrete, manageable thing that is actually in front of you right now, not the catastrophic narrative you've constructed around it. The research backs this up in ways that would have made Junyan smile. A landmark study from Harvard University found that the human mind wanders, loses itself in past regret or future anxiety, approximately 47% of the time. Nearly half of our waking hours are spent somewhere other than where we actually are. And the study found something else, something crucial. Mind wandering, regardless of what the mind wanders to, consistently produced lower happiness scores than being present. Even when people were doing unpleasant tasks but staying mentally in the room, they reported more peace than people doing pleasant tasks while mentally somewhere else. The suffering wasn't in the situation, it was in the leaving. Junyan understood this, not from a Harvard lab, from sitting with his own mind quietly for decades until he could see its patterns with perfect clarity. So, what do you actually do with this? Because this is the point where ancient wisdom often fails people. It sounds beautiful, it lands for a moment, and then the problem is still there, and the 3 a.m. thoughts come back, and you're not a Zen monk in a mountain monastery, and you need something that works in a real life with real stakes. Here is what works, and it's not complicated. Step 1. Name the actual problem, only the actual problem. Take whatever is consuming you right now and strip it down to its bare, factual bones. Not what it means, not where it leads, not the worst case version. What is the concrete reality? Write it down if you have to. 1 sentence, no adjectives that carry emotional weight, no words like disaster or ruined or everything. I lost this client, not my business is falling apart and I don't know who I am anymore. This relationship is going through a difficult period, not I'm going to end up alone and this is proof I'm fundamentally broken. The moment you reduce the problem to its actual size, you'll notice something strange happens. The panic drops by about half, not because anything changed, but because you stopped fighting a story and started looking at a fact. And facts, unlike stories, have edges. They end somewhere, they can be worked with. Step 2. Ask one question only, not, what does this mean for my future? Not, why does this keep happening to me? Not, what's wrong with me? The only question, what is the one next thing I can actually do? Not the solution, not the full plan, the one next thing. Dongshan, crossing that river, didn't understand his master's full teaching in one moment of blinding enlightenment. He took one step, and then he saw his reflection. And then something shifted. One next thing. The Stoics had a practice they called amor fati, love of fate, but the daily application of it wasn't some sweeping emotional acceptance of all suffering. It was much simpler. It was asking every morning, given what is actually in front of me today, what is mine to do? Not what was mine to do last year, not what might be mine to do in 5 years. Today, this, what is mine to do with just this? Step 3, practice the return. This is the hardest one because the mind will not stay. You will do steps 1 and 2 and feel better for a while, and then the story will come back, louder, more detailed, more convincing than before. When it does, you don't argue with it. You don't try to defeat it with logic. You simply notice it. There's the story again, and you return. Return to your breathing. Return to the room you're sitting in. Return to the concrete, specific sensory reality of right now. The temperature of the air, the weight of your body in the chair, the sound nearest to you. This is not weakness. This is not avoidance. This is the thing Yunyan had mastered so completely that he could do it lying on his deathbed, with his student trembling beside him, with the full certainty of his own death in the room, and still be calm enough to offer wisdom instead of fear. That kind of peace is not given, it is practiced. Dongshan Liangjie went on to become one of the most important Zen masters in Chinese history. He founded an entire school of Buddhist thought. He taught hundreds of students. He wrote poems about that moment in the river that are still read 1,000 years later. But none of that happened because his life got easier after his master died. It got harder, actually. He wandered. He struggled. He faced problems that had no clean solutions. The difference was that he stopped adding the weight of the story to the weight of the problem. He learned to carry only what was real. And what's real is always lighter than what we imagine. Whatever is sitting on your chest right now, I want you to hear this. You are not facing something unprecedented. You are facing something uncomfortable. There is a difference. Uncomfortable has edges. Uncomfortable moves. Uncomfortable, when you stop fighting the story around it and deal only with the fact of it, has a next step somewhere inside it. Come back to just this room, just this breath, just this one problem, stripped of everything you've added to it. Just this is it. The obstacle is the way, but only when you stop mistaking your story about the obstacle for the obstacle itself. If this gave you something real today, not just something to think about, but something to actually use, then this channel is exactly where you belong. We don't do surface level motivation here, we go deep. Ancient wisdom, real psychology, stories that stay with you. Subscribe. And if you know someone who needs to hear this right now, someone carrying something heavy and calling it permanent, share this with them. The next video will go even deeper. I'll see you there.